people's rights. Born on an Alabama cotton farm into a segregated America, he not only lived to see an African American elected president, he would be a major part of making it happen.
Tonight we gather here in this magnificent stadium in Denver because we still have a dream. We still have a dream.
Lewis, growing up, was angered by the unfairness of the Jim Crow South. He credited Martin Luther King Jr. for inspiring him to join the civil rights movement. And eventually, Lewis would become one of its most prominent leaders. As a student, he organized sit-ins at lunch counters. In the early 60s, he was a freedom rider, challenging segregation at interstate bus terminals across the South. The embodiment of nonviolence, he frequently suffered beatings by angry mobs. Lewis, 23 years old at the time, was the youngest speaker at the 1963 March on Washington.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
Then, 2 years later, led a march for voting rights in Selma. On the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he and the other marchers were met by heavily armed state and local police. They were set upon and beaten. Lewis suffering a fractured skull. It would be forever remembered as Bloody Sunday. The images of brutality shocked the nation, galvanizing support for the Voting Rights Act signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. Lewis never lost his young activist spirit, taking it from protest to politics. Standing up for what he believed was right, Lewis was arrested more than 40 times by police, according to his congressional office.
I'm on my way, and we're going to win this race.
He was elected to city council in Atlanta, then to Congress in Washington, representing Georgia's 5th District, fighting against poverty and for health care while working to help younger generations by improving education. He reached out to young people another way, co-writing a series of graphic novels about the civil rights movement, winning him a National Book Award. In a life of so many moments and great achievements, it was the achievement of another in 2008 that perhaps meant the most: the election of President Barack Obama.
And we have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America.
A dream Lewis admits was too impossible to consider decades before, even as he fought to forge its foundation.
This is an unbelievable period in our history. Martin Luther King Jr. will be very pleased to see what is happening in America. This is a long way from the March on Washington. It's a great distance from marching across the bridge in Selma in 1965 for the right to vote.
In 2011, after more than 50 years on the front lines of civil rights, Lewis received the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, placed around his neck by America's first Black president. Lewis wasn't content to just making history. He was also dedicated to preserving it. Considered the impetus of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. And he never stopped stirring up good trouble, as he liked to call it, boycotting the inaugurations of George W. Bush after the contested 2000 election, and vocally opposing Donald Trump in 2017, citing suspicions of Russian election meddling. At a protest against President Trump's immigration policy, the congressman, by then an elder statesman of the Democratic Party, riled up the crowd with words he had lived by as an activist, as a lawmaker, as a leader.
We must never, ever give up. We must be brave, bold, and courageous.
So here's our breaking news tonight. Congressman John Lewis, one of the leaders in the civil rights movement, who went on to serve more than 30.
You know, this morning when I woke up, I heard this news, right? And no matter if you disagreed with John Lewis or you agreed with John Lewis, which I disagree with John Lewis on a lot of his political views. When I say political views, I think he wasn't doing enough as a politician, not as a civil rights activist, but as a politician. I felt like he wasn't doing enough for us. But as a civil rights leader, an activist, he was one of the best. He sacrificed a lot for us. And I cried this morning. And the reason I cried, because you realize that the March on Washington in 1968, he was the last one living. Of all the speakers that day, John Lewis was the last one. Now he's gone. That should wake a lot of people up to realize that we are losing a lot of icons, black civil rights leaders, real civil rights leaders, not people who sat behind their desks and just spoke words. This was a man who was on the front lines. This was a man who took beatings for us. A very brave man. A man who was willing to give himself for his people. A lot of people don't understand that whole concept. And we need to learn from people like him. Because today we got a whole lot of activists who sit behind desks, who want to criticize, but they don't want to act. They don't want to go into the community to do certain things. They just want to talk. That's it. But like I said, John Lewis was one of the best and greatest civil rights activists of all times. It don't get any better than him. If you want to be an activist in our community, get off your ass and do what John Lewis did. Get into the fight. That's what we all should be doing. And it's sad that in 2020, there is no more John Lewis. There's no more people like John Lewis. No more. We don't see people on the front lines anymore like that. You know, you hear people like Tariq. He might say that John Lewis a coon. John Lewis want to bow down to the white man. But you know what John Lewis did? He took a beating for black people. He took a beating for black people. That's something that you never can take from him. He marched in the streets. So anybody who criticized John Lewis' civil rights abilities and the things he did as a civil rights activist, if you want to criticize him, show me that you're better than him. Show me that you can do more than what he did. Show me that you're willing to take a beating like he did. Show me that you're willing to sacrifice your life like he did. Show me. Because I don't care what no one says. Even though I did dislike his politics when it came to the black community as a congressman, but as a civil rights leader, I can never take that away from him. Never. Never. And it's sad that we have lost another person who stood up for black people, who fought for our rights. For 50 plus years, this man was in the battle. He was in the fucking battle for 50 plus years for black people. I'm sorry, it was longer than that because he was in his 20s when he started this fight. Just imagine you're in your early 20s, a college student, and you pick up the fight for black people. And you die still fighting for black people. That's amazing. That's really amazing. like I said, R.I.P. John Lewis. We have lost another great one. This is a very sad day. And we all, as Black people, should mourn this man, should respect this man. Because this man gave a lot for us as a community.